Picture a doctor looking down at a 4-year-old girl. It's a quiet, heavy moment in a clinical room. Her left leg is completely limp. It's just, lifeless,
Right.
curled at an angle it just shouldn't be. He turns to her mother, and he says those definitive words that absolutely no parent ever wants to hear. He said, "She will never walk again."
Oh, man. That's just a devastating thing to hear.
It is. Now, the girl doesn't understand those words yet. She's simply too young. But her mother does. And instead of accepting them, she starts driving every single week
Yeah.
for 2 years, 100 miles there and 100 miles back, just to give her daughter a chance.
100 miles each way. That's incredible.
Yeah, that girl's name was Wilma Rudolph. And 16 years after that doctor gave his final verdict, she would become the fastest woman on Earth.
It's honestly one of the most stunning reversals of fate in modern history. I mean, when you look at the sheer trajectory from that sterile room to the global stage, it basically defies logic.
Oh.
But the most crucial moments of this story, the real mechanisms of her triumph, they happen far, far away from any finish line.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack the true story of Wilma Rudolph, diving into how a diagnosis doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can just be, the starting line.
Exactly. Because when we analyze the layers of this narrative, we find a masterclass in human resilience, but also, in biology and psychology. It's gritty, it's painful, and it forces us to really examine how we process the absolute limitations that authority figures place on us.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to truly understand the height of the triumph, you have to understand the sheer crushing weight of the starting line. We are in Clarksville, Tennessee. The year is 1944, and Wilma is the 20th of 22 children.
22. I mean, the sheer logistical scale of a 22-child household is it's hard to even fathom.
Right. I used to complain about sharing a single bathroom with one brother. Try imagining the morning routine, the meals, the sheer volume of life for 22 kids under one small wooden roof.
It sounds chaotic, but also, intensely tight-knit.
Yeah, exactly. Her father works on the railroad, which is this incredibly demanding physical job. Her mother cleans other people's houses. So there is never quite enough money, definitely not enough room, but there's an abundance of love.
And they needed every single ounce of that communal support. Because the physical hurdles for Wilma started basically on day one. She was born premature. She weighed barely 4.5 pounds.
Wow, that is small.
To give you an idea of how fragile she was, her father could fit her entirely in the palms of his hands.
Surviving a premature birth in the rural 1940s is already a statistical anomaly. But then, at 4 years old, a barrage of illness hits her all at once. First pneumonia, then scarlet fever, and finally, polio.
Yeah, the polio diagnosis was the massive blow.
Now, I want to clarify something here, because I always pictured polio as a muscle-wasting disease, like something that just eats away at the tissue. But it's actually neurological, isn't it?
That is a crucial distinction, actually. Polio is a viral infection, but it doesn't target the muscles. It targets the nervous system.
Okay.
The virus enters the body. It often moves into the spinal cord, and it specifically attacks the motor neurons. Those are the vital pathways that, carry signals from your brain down to your muscles.
So if we use an analogy, think of polio like a thief in the night, but it doesn't steal the muscles themselves. It sneaks into the spinal cord and cuts the telephone wires connecting the brain to the leg.
I like that analogy, yes.
So the leg is still there. The muscle tissue is perfectly capable, but the brain literally cannot call it anymore.
Exactly. The signal just cannot get through. And because the muscle is suddenly receiving zero electrical stimulation from the nervous system, it begins to atrophy from sheer disuse. It withers away. That's what paralyzed her left leg.
That's just tragic.
It is. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to recognize the historical reality of 1944 in the segregated South.
Oh, right, the hospitals.
Yeah, the medical infrastructure was completely legally divided. The nearest hospital that would even admit a Black child for this kind of specialized treatment was 100 miles away in Nashville.
100 miles. I mean, you're exhausted. You work as a house cleaner. You have a house bursting with children, and a medical professional has just handed you the devastating biological reality of your daughter's severed nervous system.
Right.
It would be entirely expected to just accept it. Just say, well, this is our life now.
But her mother refuses. And that refusal is kind of the engine of this entire narrative. She decides to board a segregated bus before sunrise every single week 2 hours there, 2 hours back.
Just a grueling commute.
And this wasn't for a guaranteed cure either. I mean, there was no cure. This was merely for physical therapy that doctors knew might not even yield results. The sheer willpower, the audacity to demand a chance for your child when society and science are universally telling you no, it's staggering.
It really is.
Yeah.
But what really catches my attention is what happens when they get off the bus. The hospital trips were just the baseline. The real grinding work happened back in that crowded wooden house.
Oh, absolutely. The home care was arguably more intense.
Right. So Wilma gets fitted with a heavy metal leg brace and a specialized shoe just to keep her upright. And then her siblings step in. They take turns every single day, massaging her paralyzed leg. Not once a day, 4 times a day.
Sometimes more, yeah. It became a daily family ritual. Dozens of hands working in shifts, constantly stimulating this lifeless limb.
Wait, I need to push back on this a little bit. We hear stories like this, and it's easy to romanticize it, to say they were, pouring hope into her body. But let's look at the biology. From a strictly medical standpoint, rubbing a paralyzed leg doesn't cure a viral neurological disease.
No, it certainly doesn't.
The virus had already done its damage. So what was actually happening here? Was this just a psychological comfort, or was there real medical utility to all those massages?
It's a fantastic question, actually, and the answer is really both. Biologically, when a muscle is completely paralyzed, it doesn't just shrink. The tissue can eventually become fibrotic.
Fibrotic, like scarring?
Yeah, basically turning into stiff scar tissue. So by constantly massaging the leg 4 times a day, her siblings were physically forcing blood flow into the tissue. They were keeping the muscle fibers viable, keeping the joints supple, basically preventing contractures.
Oh, wow. So they were essentially keeping the hardware in good condition while they waited for the software to come back online.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. And regarding that software, the nervous system, there is a phenomenon called neuroplasticity. The human body is just incredibly adaptable.
Right. The brain can rewire itself.
Yes. While the dead motor neurons wouldn't come back, constant physical manipulation sends massive amounts of sensory feedback up to the brain. It forces the brain to maintain a map of that leg.
Oh, I see. So it doesn't just forget the leg is there.
Exactly. Over years, this can encourage surviving neurons to sprout new branches, what we call collateral sprouting, to connect with orphaned muscle fibers. So no, the massage didn't cure the virus, but it absolutely maintained the biological potential for movement.
That is fascinating. And we cannot ignore the psychological side of that equation. Imagine the message being delivered to a young girl's brain 4 times a day. Every single massage is a physical manifestation of belief.
Yeah, it's profound.
Her family is literally surrounding her with the expectation of healing. They created a microenvironment where the doctor's truth simply wasn't allowed through the front door.
What's fascinating here is how that internal world contrasted with the external one. Because however beautiful that communal support was, the internal reality of being a child with a disability is brutal. The world outside that house doesn't care about your microenvironment.
Right. You're a kid stuck inside, looking through a glass window.
Yep.
You watch your brothers and sisters and all the neighborhood kids racing barefoot through the grass. They're playing tag, they're falling down, they're laughing.
And you can't join them.
Exactly. You can't even stand up without a chunk of metal locking your knee in place. That has to breed a very specific kind of isolation.
It breeds a quiet, devastating internal battle. The external battle is the brace and the bus rides. But the internal battle is that whisper in the back of her mind, what if the doctor is right? What if I am just fundamentally broken?
Yeah, you picture the quiet crying of a 6-year-old, not the loud, performative crying a kid does when they want a toy. The silent crying that happens when a child has just stopped expecting anyone to fix the problem.
It's heavy. It's really heavy.
But I think this is the part of the story most people want to fast forward through. We want to skip the agonizing waiting and get straight to the gold medals.
But skipping it misses the point entirely. She had every logical, biological, and societal reason to surrender right there. The Olympic medal wasn't the miracle. The true miracle lived right here in this crowded wooden house.
Because around age 9, something shifts. The narrative pivots from her family carrying her to Wilma taking her own agency. She decides, on her own, to unbuckle the heavy leather strap.
It's a massive turning point.
She takes off the metal brace, just for a moment, just to see what happens, and she stands.
It's not a long time, and she isn't walking far, but she is bearing her own weight.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that single defiant act of standing just snowballs. By age 12, after 3 years of secret, agonizing practice. She is walking without the brace entirely. And then comes the day she does something completely unpermitted. She runs.
And we need to strip away the cinematic gloss here for a second.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, this first run was not graceful. It was
No.
clumsy. It was uneven. It looked absolutely nothing like the effortless, fluid way the other kids were darting around the yard.
But the aesthetics don't matter at all. Think about the visceral feeling of that moment. Put yourself in her shoes. For a girl who spent her entire conscious life anchored to the ground by paralyzed muscles in a metal cage,
Yeah, it must have been surreal.
an awkward, uneven, clumsy jog must have felt exactly like flying.
It is an act of pure physical rebellion, taking agency over your life. Stepping completely out of the limitations placed on you by experts is almost always an inelegant process.
You stumble, you look foolish to the outside world.
Exactly. But the importance lies in taking that first unaided step without asking anyone for permission. Progress isn't always elegant or graceful. Sometimes it's clumsy. She didn't wait for a doctor to clear her. She just ran.
Okay, I have a major question here, though, because the timeline is staggering. We just went from a 12-year-old with a clumsy, uneven, recovering jog to a 16-year-old qualifying for the 1956 Olympics.
How?
It is a massive leap.
Biomechanically, how does a leg that was severely atrophied for nearly a decade suddenly generate the elite, world-class explosive power required for Olympic sprinting?
It's an astonishing leap, and it required a brutal retraining of her neuromuscular system. First, she joined her high school basketball team, mostly just to be in the mix, to finally play. Right, just to be a kid playing sports.
Yeah, she wasn't a star instantly, but she had this raw, unrefined speed on the court that caught the eye of a legendary track coach named Ed Temple.
And Coach Temple invites her to a summer track camp at Tennessee State University.
Yes, and this is where the biomechanical magic happens. Because elite sprinting isn't just about big muscles, it is about neural efficiency. It's about how fast your brain can tell your muscle fibers to contract and relax.
Oh, back to the nervous system.
Right. And because Wilma's left leg had been compromised, she inherently had a structural asymmetry.
So she couldn't just run normally. She had to completely rewire her stride to compensate for the lost years of muscle development.
Exactly. Coach Temple's training was famously punishing. She had to build immense compensatory strength in her core, her hips, and her right leg just to balance out the stride. She was forcing her nervous system to fire in perfect, explosive synchronization. Her body ached in ways she had never experienced. She lost races. There were mornings her muscles simply didn't want to work.
I can't even imagine the soreness.
But the defining characteristic of Wilma Rudolph was an absolute refusal to stop showing up.
And that persistence pays off incredibly early. At just 16 years old, an age where I was terrified of parallel parking in driver's ed, she boards a plane to Melbourne, Australia to compete on the world stage.
Unbelievable.
And she comes home with an Olympic bronze medal in the 4x100 relay.
For almost anyone else on Earth, a bronze medal after surviving childhood polio is the ultimate happy ending. You frame the medal, you write a book, you retire.
But that bronze medal just reveals a new ceiling for her to break.
Yeah.
It proves she belongs, but it also highlights mechanical flaws in her start that she decides to obsess over for the next 4 years.
She just wouldn't settle.
No, she goes back to Tennessee State. She keeps grinding, keeps refining this body that medical science had completely written off, which sets the stage for 1960, Rome.
This is a completely new era of athletic celebrity. The 1960 Rome Olympics were the very first games to be globally televised.
Oh, wow. So the whole world is literally watching.
Yes, the atmosphere is electric. It's a sweltering hot September. The stadium is packed with tens of thousands of people, but more importantly, millions are watching from their living rooms.
The pressure is unimaginable, and Wilma utterly dominates. On September 2nd, the girl who once couldn't stand up without a metal cage runs the 100-meter dash in 11.0 seconds. Gold medal.
Incredible.
3 days later, she lines up for the 200-meter. She doesn't just win, she sets a new Olympic record, gold again. And then the final race, the 4x100 relay.
She is running the anger leg, the final stretch where you always put your fastest runner.
But the baton pass is fumbled. By the time Wilma gets it in her hand, there is a massive gap between her and the leaders. It's the kind of deficit where most runners mentally clock out and accept silver.
Yeah, the race is over for most people at that point.
But Wilma finds a gear that defies physics. She closes an impossible gap, burns past the competition, and crosses the finish line first. A third gold.
3 gold medals, 3 world records, all achieved in the span of 8 days.
It is a pinnacle of athletic dominance. She becomes the very first American woman to win 3 gold medals in track and field at a single Olympic Games. The international press is mesmerized by her fluid, powerful stride, dubbing her the Black Gazelle.
She is suddenly the most famous female athlete on the planet.
Yeah.
But if we slow down the narrative right here, right as the flashbulbs are popping in Rome, we need to look back across the Atlantic.
Back to Tennessee.
Yes. Somewhere far away, in a small, crowded house in Clarksville, Tennessee, her mother is watching her on television. The same mother who once woke up in the dark to drive 100 miles on a segregated bus, never knowing if any of it would actually work.
Wow. It was enough. All those miles, all the daily massages from her brothers and sisters, all that blind, stubborn hope, it was enough.
It really was.
And when Wilma brings those 3 gold medals back home to Clarksville, the story evolves one final time. It moves from a personal, physical triumph to a profound societal shift.
Naturally, the town of Clarksville wants to throw a massive homecoming parade for their newly minted global superstar.
Of course they do.
Wilma says yes, but she gives the city officials a strict ultimatum. She will only participate if the entire event is fully integrated.
Black and white citizens must be allowed to stand on the same street, together, or the 3-time Olympic champion doesn't show up.
And the city agrees. Because of the incredible leverage she built, it becomes the first integrated municipal event in the history of her hometown.
Just sit with that for a second. A girl who once couldn't physically stand on her own 2 feet just dictated how an entire town stood together.
This raises an important question about agency. It perfectly illustrates the intersection of physical and societal power. Throughout her life, Wilma was repeatedly handed absolute limitations by authority figures.
First by a doctor, regarding her physical biology.
Right. Then by society, regarding her race. By discarding the physical limitations of her brace, she developed the courage, the platform, and the sheer willpower to successfully discard the societal brace of segregation.
The courage she learned in that clumsy first run was the exact same courage she used to break racial barriers. It brings us to the ultimate lesson hidden inside her story. The Olympic medals are shiny, they're historical, but they aren't the miracle.
Not at all. The miracle happened years earlier, in a cramped house with too many mouths to feed. It happened when a family spent years rubbing a little girl's paralyzed leg, maintaining her physical potential when science said there was none.
Yeah.
The miracle happened the moment she stood up, wobbling and totally alone, with absolutely nobody there to applaud her.
Doctors are brilliant. Medical science is incredible. But a diagnosis is only a snapshot of reality today. Experts can tell you exactly what your body or your mind or your resume cannot do right now.
Exactly.
But they cannot mathematically account for what you will be capable of in 10 years if you simply refuse to stop trying. Wilma Rudolph didn't possess a magic wand.
No, she endured excruciating pain, thousands of hours of physical therapy, and the awkward stares of a world that wrote her off. But she made a conscious daily choice. She simply never let someone else's opinion of her future become the final period on her story.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We've looked at the biology of polio, the biomechanics of sprinting, the homecoming parade. But the truth is, we all have our own metaphorical braces.
We really do.
We all have external diagnoses that have been handed to us by someone in authority. Maybe it's a physical limitation. Maybe it's a professional ceiling a boss told you that you'd never break through. Or a personal flaw that a critic decided was going to define you forever. Somewhere, right now, someone has probably told you exactly what you will never be able to achieve.
The essential question is, what label have you accepted as the absolute end of your story? And what would happen if you decided to unbuckle that heavy brace just for a moment, just to see if you could stand on your own?
Because progress is clumsy. It's uneven. It rarely looks graceful at the start. But whenever the world tells you exactly what you'll never be, you are the one who gets to decide if that is the undeniable truth or if it's just the starting line.